What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Payton Collier podcast. My next guest is an accomplished session guitarist here in Nashville. He's recorded albums for artists like Lainey Wilson, Luke Combs, Miranda Lambert, and Hardy, just to name a few. He's also toured with artists like the Judds, Delbert McClinton, and Bob Seger's Silver Bullet Band. He's somebody who's really made a great career out of little more than having a guitar in his hands, and it was truly an honor to sit down and chat with him about his life and career. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Rob McNelley. Here we are, Rob McNelley. What's going on, brother?
Man, a lot and nothing all at the same time.
So good to have you here, man.
Yeah, good to be here.
I'm super great. You live in on this side of town too, don't you?
Very much. It only took me 7 minutes to get here, and that's not something I've said in Nashville in decades.
When'd you move here?
I closed on my house the week of lockdown, and that was a little bit nerve-wracking because I was now had a house that I had to sell, plus now I have this new mortgage, and I was really afraid that I was going to be stuck with both for whatever amount of time. But obviously the housing market was so nuts that I was able to sell that old house very easily. So I moved in at a perfect time. We were shut down. I could really move in and do everything I needed to do at the house, and I didn't have a screaming schedule for a few weeks. So, it was good.
For me as a full-time musician and my peers looking around when it all went down, and the folks of us that made it through and stayed, because a lot of people changed their career path knowing how uncertain this one is. And the ones that made it through looking at each other like, brother, you made it through, made it to the other side.
Yeah. It went a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. And I felt bad more for the live musicians because they're the ones that got hit hardest as far as I could tell. We were down, as far as being a session musician, we were down for a few weeks. And then people started sending us tracks from home because, one thing that I'm reminding myself of, at first when it happened, we thought it would be like 2 or 3 weeks. We'd all be sitting there at home.
That was the first order.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, we're going to shut it down for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll reconvene.
So it just kind of felt like a nice little, let's hang out at home for once for a couple weeks.
Let's watch some Tiger King.
Right. Let's exactly. And and then after they figured out, like, songwriters were writing over Zoom all the time, and then then people started sending tracks around to whoever could do them. And I have a home set up, so I was starting to do some of that. And then we realized this was going to go on for a longer amount of time that we didn't know how that was going to play out. And so studios started figuring out protocols that everyone felt safe with. We were all masked up, but as soon as they gave the green light to do sessions again, we were busier than I think we've ever been. Because the only way an artist could engage was to record and release material. They couldn't be out on tour. So we did a lot of Christmas records. We recorded tons of music over that period, and I was thankful for it, But yeah, I felt really bad for people out there playing clubs, trying to play clubs, and now couldn't, or tour or whatever. That's who got hit hardest.
Yeah,
or crew people that didn't have a tour to go to. It was pretty devastating.
And also just such a game changer on realizing how remote you could function in the industry, remotely you could function in the industry.
Yeah.
I don't have to go in the studio anymore.
Right.
Everybody gets a little comfortable in their sweatpants, But man, what a especially these, last 5-10 years that you've had just on studio work. I don't even know how many number one hits you had under your belt, but I know you've had,
I don't know,
this year alone, you've had the Lainey Wilson stuff come out. And she's exploded.
Yeah, I know.
I remember when I started following her on Instagram several years ago, she had like 19,000 followers. I think now she's about 1.7 million or something.
Oh, I'm sure,
Blew up on TikTok.
Yeah.
Bell Bottom Country. Tell me about working on that record.
So I also worked on the one before that with I played on Things a Man Ought to Know, and I just knew it was one of those songs that you knew, man, this should be a hit. I think it's going to be huge. And then it was. So when we rolled into Bell Bottom Country, it was just a continuation of that, same cast of characters. And I mean, now she had been out there in a major way. And so the songs are incredible. I mean, the Heart Like a Truck song I knew was going to be huge. And she's still going. I mean, you know, it's just...
Is it exciting for you when you, because you're a part of the creation of the songs? Is it exciting for you to see an artist blow up from that song, or is like your investment in them done after you record? Kinda?
Yeah. Well, with her, she came in fully realized as an artist. I feel like she's no different now than when I met her. I don't think she just completely knew what she wanted to say, and that gives any artist a leg up. So for it to go out there and succeed, because we know tons of people that are just as amazing as a Lainey Wilson, and who knows what happens. It's a fragile process after you put it out as to whether it succeeds or not, and so it's always good to see anybody get out there and work it and it to pay off the way they want it to, and for their vision to become what we all think it is when we're working on it. You know, it's a thrill every time.
You can always see like an excitement in one of you guys' eyes when you talk about the nature of the concept of the great song.
Yeah.
It's like you strip all your 50 guitar tracks and 50 layered harmony tracks away, and when you put it down to just the acoustic guitar, if you're able to play it and sing it by yourself, even if you're not a great singer, even if you're just the writer, there's something so compelling about the nature of a truly great song or country song. And so when you encountered that, like you said, you heard Things a Man Ought to Know, and you said that's a great song. Does that excite? Like, is it impossible to hold back the excitement of like giving that the extra 10% when you're like, that's the one?
Yeah, it's very exciting in the moment. You almost know that it has that potential when you're working on it. So yeah, that's thrilling because you're at the birth of it.
Delivering as a session musician, regardless of the song, I guess how you gauge and distribute enthusiasm over a collection of music that you're working on when you might get most excited about a track or two.
Yeah, I think that comes for me at the very end of the tracking, actually. Like for me, I get invested in everything equally, probably, maybe to a fault sometimes. Even like a demo session where, you know, it's a very inexperienced writer who maybe isn't writing the greatest songs they're going to write someday or whatever. I treat that like all of them. I mean, because so many times I've been proven wrong. I've played on songs that I necessarily didn't think were the best well-written songs, or more of I don't know, just something that seemed so offhandish or like just thrown out there. And then that became the big hit for that person, or the one that got everything to happen or whatever, you know. So I try and remember that and give them exactly what they're looking for. And it's hard, you know, sometimes it's harder if the song isn't there, but you make up for it. You just find a way to invest yourself in everything you're doing as much, and then stand back and look at it and go, what do we think now, you know? Mm-hmm. So
are there ever times where you've been really pleased with the track the team is, and then the artist, they're not hearing it?
Yeah. And I know that feeling because, you know, I came to town writing songs and having bands and bringing songs into other musicians, right? And so I know the feeling of having this preconceived notion about how the song should sound or go.
Vision.
Right, your vision, which you got to have. And then, but you also need to be able to have. It's hard for an artist to come in and then things start going in this whole different way because it's filtering through all these creative minds at the same time, and now it doesn't sound like what you thought it did. And sometimes that's not a good thing. But then other times it exceeds what you thought it should be. So I know, yes, that has happened where an artist hears what we're doing now and it's just a million miles away from what they thought it should be. And it's just a roll of the dice. I mean, you just either dial it back and do exactly what it's different every time, but yes, I'm sure there have been times where the artist has wanted to fire me or the entire band because why won't he just do what,
I'm sure sometimes it's a turd and sometimes it's a golden nugget.
Yeah. And both can succeed or fail, commercially. I think I enjoy just being part of a creative process and a journey, and that's what I hope. Whatever artist I might be working with or songwriter or whatever, is that they're on that journey, that we're all on that together, where that we all have the confidence to proceed forward at the same rate with an idea, and hopefully they're open-minded to a different direction that might open up a whole thing for this song or something that, you know how it is. I mean, when you've sat with your own idea for long enough before you've brought it to anybody, you've really gotten married to certain things about it. But you have to divorce that when you invite other people in to a degree. And when people, I found that when artists, usually more experienced artists, get that, or more experienced songwriters, they come in and they know they're handing this to the players and we're going to take care of it, but we're also going to move it forward in some way. Hopefully they agree that we're moving forward. That's it,
And I've wondered this too, just in the modern session world, when you're making a lot of these current modern radio songs, what the pacing is like in the studio, because it doesn't seem like it's full band like it was, or at least always full band like it was back in the day. Yeah. So are you usually sitting there by yourself, just with the producer, or are there typical band settings in the modern recordings and stuff, I guess?
Well, I would say we've moved, at the current time, I think we've moved back towards tracking with a band and more organic, ways of doing it where we're just playing it live. But in the era that I came up in as a session player, there was a lot of more pop influence, more, put together songs. So it could go either way. But I would say probably more so than not, we're in a room as a band playing, but I've had, people bring me in after the tracking and overdub on the whole thing or whatever, and it's just me, the producer and the engineer and the artist in the room or whatever.
Do you have a brand of country music or an era or something that is the most exciting, the most compelling to you?
Well, they fight with each other because I came up listening to, 70s country. I didn't know. I was young. I was a kid. I mean, my first guitar hero was Willie Nelson. I love the way he plays guitar.
I love it too, sincerely.
Some people like to do the bad impression of it, and it's funny. And
I do
all
that. It's super hokey.
Right.
And I'm a part of that.
And so am I. I've done that, but man, I mean, when you forget about that, it's kind of like Bob Dylan's voice. If you hear the imitation more than you hear him actually singing, then you're not connected to it anymore in some way. But I grew up listening to like a lot of his music. Of course, Hank Williams. All the staples. That was going on in my house, in my grandparents' house. But I probably realized I was listening to country music in the '80s. So Alabama and all that era of urban cowboy movie era of country music.
Pure country.
That is, I mean, I was heavy into Hank Jr. at 11 years old and all of that kind of stuff that was in the forefront. Charlie Daniels Band.
Are you pretty familiar with Charlie Daniels' Million Mile Reflections album?
Yeah.
There's a song on there called Blue Star.
Oh, yeah. Blue Star.
You know it?
Oh, yeah.
You're the first one.
Really?
I'm always talking about, trying to tell people, I'm like, Blue Star is where it is at, man. That's like
cool
acid country.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, that's so funny. I haven't thought about that song in forever.
It's that part that's like, and I bet she never.
Yeah, I know.
In the night.
That era of Charlie Daniels Band is really special to me, like Legend of Woolly Swamp and all that stuff.
I'm very happy to meet somebody else that appreciates Blue Star.
Me too. I'm gonna have to listen to that when I get out of here.
Well, I'm sure we'll have a playlist by the end of this. So let's dial it back a little bit. I want to kind of get in the mind of you growing up. Of course, so you grew up in Columbus or a suburb there.
Yeah.
What was your introduction to taking music seriously?
My dad was a musician, so he was a big part of that because musicians were in and out of the house. We had a very musician lifestyle, which to me seemed normal because I didn't know any other way. But when I started talking to my friends at school about things that were going on at my house, no one else was doing anything.
So your dad was a full-time musician? So out late and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that, and he was always writing songs. He was on Atco Records. He had a band called McGuffey Lane that was Paul Worley produced a couple of their records, and that in the 80s they were kind of moving towards that whole urban cowboy era of country music, sort of country rock a little bit, like sort of like an Alabama or something like that. So I was just immersed in music. I just grew up with it. It was very normal for me to see all these people making a living playing music, coming to our house and playing one of my dad's new songs or working those up, and then they would be on the radio up there, but there was a defining moment, bringing it back around to the Beatles. I was all like, I had my first guitar when I was like 8 years old, and I was playing drums before that, but I didn't. I latched onto the guitar more, and my first guitar looked like a brand new version of Willie Nelson's guitar, so I thought that's how I had to play guitar. So I was tearing those licks up in my way. And then John Lennon got shot. And every musician I knew, I didn't know who the Beatles were. I'd of course heard the music. It's everywhere in life. But I didn't put it together who it was. And every musician that I knew, my dad included, were just so devastated by this person. It was on the news. It was a heavy, like, what? Well, who's this guy? I had to find out who it was that meant, I think I was probably trying to just connect to what my dad felt about it. And he started pulling Beatles records out and just playing me all this stuff. And I think that was a moment, there was something about that got so exciting that it was kind of like what people described when they saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan for me. And then there was the Rolling Stones, and now I'm finding out about all this British rock, which when I found the Rolling Stones, I didn't know they were playing a lot of Chuck Berry songs and Muddy Waters songs and Jimmy Reed songs, and now this whole other door opened of a different style of music, and then that just really got inside me, all of that, and that was the big boom for me.
So you felt like with the passing of John Lennon, and then did you feel at that time in your life that you're like, oh my God, like what a loss? Once you started digging back and you're like, wow, the contribution that he brought, how could somebody do this, what they had done? I mean, maybe like an early time in your life that you really felt like the the gravity of your own existence, man.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Exactly.
You were just talking about Willie Nelson's playing, how that was so big on you as a kid. But dude, back in the day, he could totally get down, like playing solid, creative licks.
Yes. I mean, I saw him, I don't know how long it's been now. I always think it's a couple years ago, and then I find out, no, that was 10 years ago. I mean, even the last time I saw him, he played some stuff that just moved me so much. I mean, it just his phrasing and just all of it that sounds like it's not working, but it's absolutely working on a heart level,
Yeah, isn't that a weird thing? I think him and I think Merle, Willie, and Waylon, just the way all three of them played guitar was so unique to their character.
That's funny you mentioned Waylon. I didn't realize how great of a guitar player he really was, and how much of that stuff was actually him or whatever. Kenny Vaughn probably doesn't remember this conversation, but he turned me on to that fact, and then it made me listen to Waylon a whole different way. But I agree. They were really great.
Well, just
musicians.
The phrasing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it seems like just there was such a freedom in their playing that you don't find in a lot of radio music, because and not to discredit it, of course, but when you're writing hook licks, it's just a little bit different than, I feel like those are like, I don't even know how to personify it, but they had more like character licks in the way that they wouldn't like repeat the same way every time. There'd be different mutes and grabs and changes, just more like a free form approach rather than polished, I guess you could say.
Yeah. It's all honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they couldn't have done it any other way. I think that's the music I gravitate to in all genres. Is they're just as natural to me, a musician, as John Lee Hooker. I can't imagine them playing it any other way than they did. And they came up at a time where that was celebrated more than it has been in recent history, to have that much individuality and have those rough edges that make it compelling.
Doesn't it seem that it's kind of harder, and granted I didn't live then, but just in the modern world, to kind of conjure that individualism as an artist and a musician with all the distractions that we have at our fingertips?
Yeah. It's great that we have the access to information or whatever now, but we do struggle to keep something back in the art form of music, where there's not just one way of sounding on a guitar or any instrument, and I know everybody knows that, and everybody kind of plays the way they play or whatever, but it used to be that you knew exactly who was playing or singing,
That's why you listened.
Yeah. I mean, everything had a surprise element to it. And now it's a little less so, especially when it comes to commercial music. Now, I think we are starting to come out of that a little bit, and people are trying to have some rough edges back in the mix of what people are going to hear. Because I think, I just hope the pendulum keeps swinging back that way, because I've listened to records that I'm on, and to go find out if I'm still on it or not, and I'm absolutely still on it, and I don't quite recognize myself, because maybe it just sounds different than the tracking day once they've done things that they might do in more of a pop sounding track. It's all gridded up and tuned, and all something smoothed out that was rougher the day we cut it. We were more excited. And I'm not trying to put that down, because I know that that's part of that process, and that's just as valid as anything. But yeah, I'm just, I prefer things to be a little bit more honest and real. That's all the stuff I listen to.
Yeah, I feel like, and I really don't know if I've asked any of you session cats this before, but do you have to develop kind of like an ability to emotionally detach from these songs that you're working on, stuff that you might care about so much, and knowing that you don't really have total control over the end product, but just saying, like, if you are like, I absolutely loved my solo on this, I crushed that riff,
Yeah.
I loved my tone,
Yeah.
and then you hear it, and then it's not on there, or you didn't make the final cut of the record,
Right.
just not getting devastated by that, or too excited when a song that you played on does super well.
Yeah. I'm far enough into this that I don't remember how that felt when I probably had more of an opinion about that. I've crossed over into this other world where, man, I'm just going to play what I think they want and do it the best way I can. And I know what I did here, and they seem very happy today. And I know that might change as soon as they start adding other stuff, and maybe it doesn't fit anymore. You know, I trust their process enough to just go, well, they probably made the right decision if they took my solo off and turned it into a fiddle solo or something else or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you know, obviously you get invested in an idea, you want to see it, other people hear you want to experience other people hearing it with you. But you know, honestly, by the time something comes out, it's
On to the
6
next,
months down
right?
the road. I may hear it again, and it'll take me a few times to even remember. Oh, wait a minute, I did this cool part. Why did I take that? You know, but you know, I don't experience those feelings like you might think. I mean, I just trust that they're smart enough to know what they want to do with all of it. You know.
Yeah. And it probably helps to working with people you trust and admire and respect. Like
Exactly.
you know that they're going to bring the.
Yeah, they're the ones that have to take the meetings after we're done and answer for everything that happened. You know, we don't have to do that. You know? And you know, not directly anyway.
Mm-hmm. So in those earlier days, you said, you know, you were deeply impacted by the assassination of John Lennon, which is still a weird sentence to say out loud.
God, I know, isn't it?
So when did you start to were you getting recognition from your family or your peers? Like, dude, you're good at guitar, man. Like, really good, dude. Do you know how good you are?
I started to realize that when I was playing along to songs that it kind of sounded a lot like what I was playing to. But you don't have that confirmation when it's just you. No, I just started to notice all the musicians that would be around. My dad would be like, "Oh my God, hey, Rob just wrote this song. Check this out while you're setting your drum set up or whatever." And he put the guitar in my hands and I'd play some song that I wrote. And yeah, so I started to notice that people were paying attention to all of that. And that's huge. I mean, that's a big confidence builder. These people that you look up to and you know how to do it better than you or know more about it. If they're giving you any love in that area, you're onto something. So, yeah.
I so like eternally excuse me, sorry, was honky tonkin last night. But I eternally revere the spirit of just like when you catch the bug as a kid, just the spirit of just a young boy or a girl, you know, just shredding an electric guitar as loud as they can take it in their room. That kind of freedom. I spend a lot of time, just me personally, like trying to get back to that pureness of the love and the infatuation with music back then, before it was about having a career, before it was about, you know, living in a nice house, paying for it with my guitar in my hands. I miss those days. Do you still feel like you have that sensation in your life?
Yeah, I do. I still, first thing I do when I get up super early so that I can drink some coffee and play guitar for an hour before I've got to do anything else. And then I probably do the same thing, you know, I drive people nuts at my house. I'm like, you've been playing guitar all day. Why do you want to play more guitar? Well, I've got.
You never get tired.
There's
of it.
more to say, I guess. I'm still trying to find something that I've never found before, whatever. So my day typically starts with guitar and ends with guitar, and it's just kind of I don't know. It's a dedication that you just. It's not something I make myself do. It's something I still want to do. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
It's encouraging. Maybe I just need some more coffee.
That's what it is.
Need a little more caffeine. So when did Delbert McClinton enter your life?
Well,
was that the first big break for you, like in a way?
Well, no, because before that I played with Wynonna Judd for a little bit, and I played with Leanne Womack for a little bit.
Their reunion tour, right? The Judds?
Yeah, I did the Judd reunion tour.
So you'd moved to Nashville by this point then.
Yeah. Delbert McClinton kind of happened on the heels of, I did a tour with Leanne Womack. We opened 30 shows for Willie Nelson, so I got to sit and watch him every night. That was amazing. And then, you know, as these things happen, tours end, and, well, I've saved up some money to find the next tour, you know. And I'd been subbing gigs for Delbert McClinton's guitar player at the time. This is 2002. And his guitar player just decided to leave the band. And so Delbert called me and literally the next week after that Leanne thing wrapped up, I didn't know what I was going to be doing. A few days later, my gear was on his bus now, and we're playing, and then that went on for about 8 years. But the cool thing about Delbert is, you know, a lot of people think of him as a blues guy, but he's an everything guy. I mean, there's a lot of country music in his catalog, and we, you know, there was an old schoolness about it. The education there was, we went on stage without a set list every night, and he just called songs, and he had 1 million of them because he'd already been recording for decades at that point. You know.
And so did you just have to know the whole catalog?
That was impossible, because he would pull out weird, obscure songs that even if you were in his band and listened to a lot of his music to kind of get familiar with a lot of stuff, he was still pulling out stuff that we never played or didn't hear before that. And you just never knew it was coming. So I like that. And I preferred that to the touring I'd been doing in Nashville, where every night was the same, you know. Now you're in this environment where the only thing that is the same is that it's different every second. And even the way we played the songs night to night was different every night, you know, in a lot of ways. Of course, we had some standbys that we knew he was going to play every night, you know, but man, it was just exciting because you had to be engaged the whole 2-hour show or whatever, you know.
How did what was the musical foundation if you were playing stuff you didn't know of his catalog or hadn't heard? Or was it him? Like, is he like, hey, go to the 5, everybody?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not talking bad about Delbert when I say this, but there was you had to learn how to speak Delbert in about 5 seconds before the song starts. Because I mean, even the first gig that I did with him, he turned to me and he goes, "We're gonna play blah blah blah," and you know, I mean, I was filling in. I got a few.
Dude, that wasn't on the list.
I know. There's none of that in his world. I remember, you know, him going, "Well, okay, it starts with you. What key is it in?" And he'll tell you a key, but it's not the right key, you know. Yeah. And somebody else is behind him going, "Oh, it's in B flat," you know. And he's like, "Well, it starts with you," and it's and you just hear these sounds coming out of his mouth, and then he starts counting the song off, and you just kind of imitate what he just sang to you, whatever that was in that key. And, you know, if you can do that, then you can play with Delbert McClinton. And if you can't, then you're probably a little more sane than I am.
You gotta learn how to speak Delbert.
You do.
I've heard that's how Michael Jackson would do songs in the studio. He would just kind of scat to the session musicians.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you know what? That I didn't realize it then, but that was giving me a lot of training for doing sessions, because there are a lot of people that are so brilliant, but they don't know what they're doing musically, and they don't know how to explain it. And they can sing a bastardized version of something in their head that's not fully realized. And I had so many instances with him in the studio and on stage where I had to take that kind of direction, that I think it just got me in the practice of dealing with that kind of musician or
that on the fly improv.
Yeah,
it better be good.
Everything is gut instinct, and a lot of times what they're singing to you is the rhythmic punctuation, not the melodic content. You got to fill that part in.
Your time with Bob Seger as well. I know I've seen an interview with you where you just talk about like his fiery passion when he's on stage, and how people respond to those songs.
Oh God.
And I mean, I'm a big turn the page guy.
Me too.
I think that one just, there's something different. There's a darkness to it.
That song, you know, it's for us, but it's also for people that don't know, that always are inquisitive about what we do. They can listen. I can point you to that song, and if you just listen to the words of that song, that's what it's like being on the road, you know. And but man, he's full of,
hey, we can keep talking about turn the page, brother.
I mean, I remember hearing that song for the first time because somebody was doing an interview with him, and I was a kid. I was probably like, I don't know, 13, 14. And I always knew the song because it played on the radio. All of his stuff played on the radio so much. I knew it, you know. But I remember running through the living room, and the guy on TV was singing that song, and I turned and I looked, and oh wow, now I've got a face to who sings that song. You know, and I remember seeing an interview with him, and I've never forgotten it. You know, just talking about what it's like being on the road, and how that really is, and how it looks like one thing to everybody when you're famous, but it's not the same as what it really is. And I don't know. It's just kind of cool that I have that memory, and then years later, out of the blue, I'm playing with him. I mean, that's surreal. That's the good stuff right there.
How do you feel about it? It's so unique, like how country music, even in modern country music and 70s country music and stuff, the modern production, the past production, how it elevates a song and brings it to life in a way, like all the layered harmonies and stuff. That's always been present in country music.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased because I'm such a big country music fan, but I think like, I don't know if there's another genre of music that just tells a story and touches the heart like country music does.
I agree. I mean, before we started, we were talking about the Beatles, and like, obviously In My Life can do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right?
It's kind of a country song. I mean, Cash recorded
exactly.
it on the American
Yesterday,
board,
Blackbird. Yeah. I mean, these, but obviously there are other things that do that, but I really think chief among them is definitely country music. I mean, I got to work with Don Schlitz a few years ago, recording a bunch of demos, and man, that art of that era of country music, like songs like The Gambler, which he wrote and all that. I mean, I found myself charting the songs for the session, and halfway through, I'm not even charting anymore. I'm listening to this lyric, and that's the magic right there. you know, when it just pulls you in when you're not even trying.
He had a great joke. We saw him at the Opry, and I didn't know that it was him. He was starting out with I guess a new song that he'd worked on or something. And then his second song, he goes, people tell me, I got to say I wrote this song, because if I don't, they'll think they walked into the worst karaoke bar they've ever been in, and then proceeds to play the gambler.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, we've got this, there's a whole different way. The culture doesn't exist quite the same way that it did back then. I mean, obviously things were a little slower paced in the world, or whatever contributes to that. But you know, I mean, we're in this era where like people are pressured to get to the second chorus faster. So, you know, the modern country song where they cut the second verse really short so they can get back to the chorus, like a lot of those style of songs that we've heard in the last few years. I imagine it's really challenging to really let a story blossom if you don't have the full length second verse, you know? And that's, I don't know.
I remember, did you play on She Got the Best of Me by Luke?
Luke
Combs.
Luke Combs. What album is that on?
I know it's one of those 4 quarters that probably run together. That is on that's on the first run of hits, the When It Rains It Pours and the Hurricane.
If it's on that record, it was before I was involved.
Did you work with Luke in studio when you worked on the Luke songs?
Yeah.
What's his input? Kind of like, oh man, that hits, because he's such a you know.
Luke Combs is just he's one of us. He just kind of hangs out, and that's what makes his session so much fun. He's not walking in like he's a star, you know, which I'm not accusing other people of doing that either. But you know, he is just a dude. He's into guitars. He's into, you know, just being part of the band. He's just the singer. So it's pretty fun. Yeah, he gets fired up when it's going good.
He's so down to earth too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you stumbled across his Joe Rogan interview,
No.
but yeah, it's
I'd like to hear that.
There's a lot of people up at the top, right? But you can just tell Luke has got some of his, if not all of his roots, you know, still in place. I mean, he just seems like a genuinely good person. So what have you worked on that has excited you the most in the last couple of years? Not necessarily picking favorites, but just like maybe a project that you're like, man, we got that one right.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, the Miranda stuff, the Lainey stuff, that's and when I went to work on the Eric Church stuff we did in North Carolina, that was really fun. Man, lately though, there's a guy that I'm really rooting for named Will Jones.
He lives right there.
I mean, I got to play on some of that stuff, and I don't know why I was there, because he's so good on guitar. He doesn't need me there.
He is so good.
And you know, he's I would want to listen to a record of him playing and singing without me involved at all, you know, and maybe I got replaced. I wouldn't even be mad about it if I did. But that's somebody, you know, I like I think this Tyler Booth. I'm interested in what he's doing, you know, a little bit. Oh man.
I really like Zach Top too. I don't know if you've ran into Zach Top.
I haven't.
Yet.
I've heard that name, but I haven't.
Shit, I listen to him all the time.
Yeah.
But it's real. It's real. It's kind of like bringing back that 90s Joe Diffie, Mark Chestnut kind of type singing. Because that's the thing about Will. I mean, boy can just sing his ass off. And play. I don't know anybody down here who's got the best of both worlds quite like that.
And it's honest.
Yeah,
I mean, like I said, you know, it just comes out of him.
Grew up doing bluegrass.
Right.
I think that. I believe in if you get the head start from like the family and you're singing family harmonies by the time you're 6, you know.
It probably does something for you.
So why does a producer or an artist, why does somebody call Rob McNelley instead of the next guy?
I'll never be able to answer that. I mean, what you find out about this when you work for a lot of different people that's interesting is that they latch on to certain things about your playing. Okay? So like these 2 or 3 producers over on this side think of me as a blues guy. Then these people think of me as a pop guy for some reason. And then these people think of me as a country guitar player. And then these people think of me as a rock guitar player. Well, the truth is I'm all of that. But what they gravitate towards when they're making a project and the type of projects they would get called to produce, they need that aspect of my playing that they like, right? So I don't know how to answer that question other than I just must do it differently than everybody else. And I'm not fortunate enough to be in the room to hear how it goes with another player, right? So I just come in and I'd throw my skill set at it. And and the more you work with that producer, they get used to the shorthand that they can get to. Like, you know, I know what I like about your tones or the things you naturally do already line up 80% with what I want to hear. And then the last 20% we work on together. I don't know. I think people just call me because I think at the end of the day, people call you because they're just comfortable with you and they like working with you. They know you're there to support them.
It's the most important part, right? Because there's almost an infinite list of the people that have at least on paper, have the skill level or the skill set. And so just being a person is so important.
Yeah.
And you saying that kind of made me think of just an analogy of a great actor who gets typecast in a role early on in their career or pigeonholed. You know, because they played a villain in one movie and then they want you to be the villain in every movie. But you as an actor might say, you know, well, I want to pursue comedy roles or whatever.
Here's my philosophy. Okay, you helped me put this in the better perspective. So I've always tried to do things differently than anybody else, and at least enough to where I don't disregard the commerciality of what we're making because you do not want to not understand that part of it. But I've always tried to have some uniqueness about it because when I moved to town, you know, Brent Mason was still like the thing that most people were trying to be or really taking to heart. What they went out and played, all the chicken picking type of stuff that he was known for and his sound, you know, and all of that. And I realized pretty quickly that I needed to not do that because or copy anybody else. You know, I needed to be informed by it and have enough of it to put you in the mind frame of that when I played, but not to sound like that. And that's a hard thing to do in a town that wants you to do something because right now that's what everybody's doing. And that's probably why I ended up playing with so many Americana type of artists because it was just a different take on all of that. And it's a hard sell. It's a long, hard climb when you do that. And songwriters are probably doing that all the time. Trying to write a song that's like, will give that listener the same feeling they get when they listen to these songs, but it's new, you know, and that's what we're all trying to do. And I don't know that I've succeeded in my mission statement or not, but I just realized I had to not do what was expected all the time. And, you know, it took a while for people to catch on to me at all. I was in town a long time before I ever really got going in a session world, and I never thought that would happen. But every time I got in front of a microphone, I tried to put myself out there in some way and give them what they wanted at the same time. And I think somehow now I'm just out on this limb where I just go. I don't even think like that anymore. I just go. And it's...
You pull a Nike on them?
What's that?
You pull a Nike on them and just do it?
Yeah, I just do it, you know. I mean, and all session musicians, I'm in awe of everybody that I get to play with every day. We're all like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not unique in that way, but that's something that if I were talking to somebody moving to town about what you got to do this, I wouldn't know how to tell them specifically what to do, but I would really try to drive that point home, is that find your lane and be in it wholeheartedly, because that is what makes people call you. And the more you do that, the more you're going to like what you're getting called to do, because it's what's coming out of you naturally that resonates with people. You're not trying to do something else. And, you just got to be persistent about it and believe in it. And when you believe in it, other people will too. And then the next thing you know, you look back and you've got enough people believing in you that you can pay your bills, And
who's to say that if you were living the copycat lifestyle, that you would have had anywhere near as successful a career or been provided the opportunities that you've been given?
Yeah. Well, they would have been different opportunities.
Right.
Because there's a lot of players out there who don't have that creative drive or that real, whatever that is. And they make great livings, I mean, they're doing something maybe different than what somebody like myself would do, but they, there's no, we're just trying to play music for a living, There's a different way to do that for everybody. So
I just think it's so important, and maybe you guys don't want the notoriety, but I wish more people understood how important you are as a building block of this thing that we all love so much. And I hope you're proud of yourself and that kid that was running by the TV looking at Bob Seger in Ohio, listening to McGuffey Lane.
Yeah.
I do have one last question for you before we go, though.
Yeah.
Toby Keith.
Yeah.
You worked on, I'm a huge Toby Keith fan.
Yeah.
Like, I know that you played on the Bus songs, but there's a song on that album called Running Block.
Wow. Okay, you're going back a ways.
It's Toby Keith's song about going home with a larger woman so that his buddy can go home with a smaller woman.
That's starting to ring a bell.
And the chorus says, well, I tried to drink her skinny, but she's still about 315. Sometimes you got to bow up. Take one for the team.
Yeah. Okay, that's coming back to me.
All of that just to say, I absolutely love Toby Keith's sense of humor, and God bless
Me
him.
too.
Hope he heals up soon.
Me too. He's a great dude.
You spent a lot of time with him then?
Around the time that I was doing some sessions for him, he had this other band called Incognito Bandito. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
It was short-lived. But
probably because it was too good.
Well, it was fun, and it was good in a way. But he had this tequila. He was his Toby Keith's tequila, whatever. And to launch that, he decided he was going to put together a band called Incognito Bandito and do these pop-up shows at some big places and a lot of his bars and stuff to promote the tequila. And it was kind of a cover band. Well, it was a cover band. And we did a bunch of these songs that he came up in clubs playing, and it was just kind of like nobody. It was just like tonight, Incognito Bandito. His name wasn't on it anywhere, and then people would show up, and they would announce it to the fan club like hours before the show. So they were always well attended, and people figured out at the very last minute that oh my gosh, it's Toby Keith. He's gonna So I did get to spend some time with him, just hanging around backstage like we were in a band together,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but he was a great guy, he's just I hope he's pulls out of his health issues.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that classic story about him, like Haggard's last show. He saved the day. Did you know about that?
No, tell me.
Yeah, that Hag at this point, like he's near the end of his rope, and he's like hooked up to the oxygen tanks while he's playing and stuff. And apparently it was in Vegas, I think. And Toby just was coincidentally in Vegas. And as the story goes, Hag asked Toby before he went out, he said, "Hey, how many of my songs do you know?" He said, "All of them." And about halfway through, Haggard couldn't finish the show. And so he pulled Toby out, and Toby, without any lyrics or anything, just stood there in front of the band and did the majority of the show. But then apparently Haggard took like a 45-minute break. I don't know if he hit the inhaler a few times, but he came out with just that old Merle Haggard swagger, and him and Toby finished the show together.
Wow, what a great story, man. I didn't know about that.
I sure appreciate you taking the time to travel 7 minutes
Thank
over
you,
here,
man. Yeah.
and being here.
Worth every minute of it. Thank you.
And I look forward to see your endless vault of ideas continue to not run out in the years ahead with great. Maybe we'll team up one of these days.
Hey, man, I'd love it.
Yeah,
anytime.
It was an honor to have you on.
Yeah.
And
honored to be here.
Rob McNelley, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Payton Collier podcast.
All right.